Do you guys make business decisions together?
No, I'm the boss.
I know that's not true, but guys. Michael and Vivian, welcome to the show today. How you guys doing?
Good, Garrett.
Good.
Thanks for having us.
Yeah, having you on your own show, Michael. It's great as a guest with obviously a very important guest, Vivian. And I listen. I know you guys pretty well. I've been over to your guys' place to visit quite a few times, and yeah, I'm always impressed by the way you guys have been able to navigate your relationship and in this crazy entrepreneurial journey that we're in around apartments and creating something bigger than ourselves. So it's exciting for me to be able to interview you guys here as well. But I want to dig in a little bit and let's take it back and tell us a little bit about your relationship in the early days.
Back when I was chasing girls.
Yep. And you chased one and you landed.
I chased one. I got lucky. No, we actually we met in college. It was at Virginia Wesleyan University in Virginia Beach, and yeah, we met there. She was a freshman. I was a junior, and if you're not watching this on YouTube, which you should, Vivian is half Mexican, half Filipino. So when I saw her skin's a little brown, and she had this crooked hair, high on one side, low on the other, and she had a braid coming down. She had bells on her ankles, and I was like, what is that? And so I started chasing her, but she made it very hard. Yeah, she was definitely made me chase her for months.
That's typically how it goes, right? Like the guy's got to chase, the girl's got to play hard to get a little bit. Yeah, so you guys met in college, and then Vivian, how did you see it? How did you from your perspective when
That's about right. That's about right.
Yeah.
We met in college, and he was that weird guy who just kept looking at me and talking to me. And eventually we went out, and I guess as they say, the rest is history. We've been together for 25 years this year. Married, rather.
That is crazy. So I'm
plus 7 years dating. So it's been a minute.
It's amazing. It's absolutely amazing. It's interesting to me because I'm at the other end of the spectrum, and I'm just beginning my journey into marriage. So I definitely want to know this, but what do you think led to 25 years of marriage working?
Yeah, that's a good question.
And this is a lot to unpack. So as much as you guys got,
there is a lot. And this is a lot with hindsight, and no one ever tells you this. So this might serve some other people, but I think not looking towards your spouse for fulfillment. What is that Tom Cruise movie?
You
complete me. Like that's just a bunch of horse manure. Like if you're looking for some other person or something or circumstance to complete you, you're never going to find it. You're always going to be disappointed, right? Because no human can really complete or fulfill you.
You can't meet those expectations every day.
Yeah, so if people are expecting the other person to complete them, they're all going to be disappointed, and it's going to wear off as soon as they're no longer in love the way they were before. So, it's really more the other way around. I think when you get married, and certainly when you have kids, you discover, or I did, that it's no longer about you. Like when marriage, sort of, but really when you have a kid, you're discovering it's not just about you. And I think the more you think about it going into a marriage like that it's not about you, it's about the other person and serving that other person, and really fundamentally getting the agreement to help each other become a better version of yourself. I think fundamentally that's a really good agreement. So it's not like, what can you do for me, but how can we help each other become a better person?
I'd agree with that. And I think it's a choice that we make every day. There's a lot of patience that goes into that. And then just that choice, I am going to be here today. I'm going to show up. I'm going to do the best I can. I'm going to help Michael. I'm going to help my kids. And we're just going to build a life together day by day.
The other thing is being on the same page with regards to values. Now, we lucked out with that because it turns out we share a lot of values, but it should have been more of an intentional act. Just values with anything. What is important to you? What do you like? What kind of behaviors do you like? What kind of behaviors don't you like? Right. And you're never going to get 100% overlap. Right. For example, I tend to be on time and Vivian slightly less so. Okay. But it's not a major thing. It's not a major problem. It's not as fundamental about what you want in life and things like that. So get on the same page, with your goals and aspirations a little bit. So one of the things we love is we love traveling together. I mean, it's something we've always, even when we first met, we traveled as much as we could, getting on the same page, possibly. Well, when you start having kids, getting on the same page about how are you going to raise your kids? Like what's that going to be? Who's going to do what? So in other words, getting on the same page regarding the values.
Well, when did you guys actually start to think about values? Like when did that even come into the peripheral of, was it when things got more serious with kids? Did you guys talk about it before? What did that look like?
I don't think that we consciously actually use those words until, here very recently. But I think even from the very beginning, they were things that we looked at, like how did we want to raise our kids? I remember talking when we were much younger regarding discipline. Are you a strict parent? Do you need to give your children reasons for everything? How do we want that family to look like? Do we want to have meals together? And even as simple as holidays, do we do our own thing or do we go and spend holidays with family, with extended family? And I think we started looking at those things early on, but we didn't use maybe that term, we are talking about our values and they are this. We didn't start using that language until here more recently when we really tried to figure out what those are.
Yeah, it was, I don't know, 6-7 years ago is when we actually came up with our values. We can talk about that a little later on, but it was really not in the foreground, right? But looking back on it, that's really one of the key areas of strength for the marriage is having alignment in values. And then the other thing I would say is communication, being on the same page and then communicating, because you're therefore your conflict resolution mechanism, right? So when you are no longer on the same page or you get in some kind of argument, how are you going to extricate yourself out of that? And I think everybody can get better with that, but communication I think has been key.
Yeah, I think even in my relationship, I think one of the things that lacked the most was that conflict resolution mechanism. It was like if you get in a fight, it would last for days, and it was just super exhausting. And I had to get professional help to be able to manage and figure out how to navigate that. And I'm not ashamed to say that. And we were able to figure it out.
It's good because it's not intuitive for me, right? Because some people are much more rational than I am, right? I'm much more analytical, logical, and maybe some other people in the family are less so. So it's how do you deal with that? I don't know. You read a few books, and so professional help is I think it's good, because you're right. You can't let something fester for days on end. That's not going to go well.
No, and we're as entrepreneurs, we're difficult people to deal with sometimes, as far as like
you are.
I am. Yeah, right. I'm not going to put you in any box. You're like,
I'm super easy.
I'm great.
Yeah.
But just it's more the situation. I mean, than anything. We're in this kind of, we never really shut off, essentially. And so I think for me personally, it's having some of those things in place at a strong foundation. I think what you're alluding to in general, so your communication has a strong foundation, your conflict resolution is pretty strong in your foundation. What are there any other things that were foundational that you guys built that kind of put you on the right track for success?
Yeah, I think I would say probably complementary strengths. They say opposites attract, and we just did some personality thing. It was like actually a marriage seminar we're doing, and at the top it says you couldn't be more opposite. And so
I could have told him that before we took that.
Yeah, and so
long test.
I said earlier, you don't complete each other, but for some reason you sort of do. It's almost like 1 + 1 is far greater than 2 in a marriage that works. And so I bring certain strengths to the table, and I have certain weaknesses that she overcomes. So we complement each other in that way. For example, I'm just wired for efficiency. Like I'm just a productive animal machine, right? And therefore, I don't really value relationships or feelings, right? Because they're super inefficient. Those are awful for me, and I try to avoid as much as possible. And of course, that that then creates other problems, which then makes me inefficient. And so now I have to deal with it because now I have a problem. And so there's my insanity, right? And she's very good at relationships, right? So she spends quality time with the children, right? And just quality time. And she values more relationships. And I'm not saying you're not productive, but that's not like you're not maniacally focused on productivity.
Well, and productivity is measured in different ways.
What do you mean by that?
Well, I mean, like sometimes I can be much more productive because we're having conversations with other people. So the information that I learned, the relationships that we've built make other things that happen on down the road much easier.
Right. Therefore more productive.
Right. So see,
we're all learning, right? So
wow. Vivian just dropped a big one, big bomb on me right there. That's awesome.
That's just in the last 5 minutes.
I love that. I know. Man, that's so cool. So have you guys, it sounds like you kind of intuitively know what those offsets are, but I mean, do you always keep them kind of front of mind when you're navigating different parts of your relationship?
I think that's a hard question to ask now, like some 25 years into marriage, because some things we didn't do before, we had to learn. And then in that process, now we think about much more, like how somebody says something, like I know how to tell Michael that something is bothering me, not that I'm attacking or accusing him. I've learned how to much better say that. Whereas before I probably would have said it in a way he would have gotten very defensive. I don't do that anymore. I try to say it in a different way so that he hears it more as I'm just sharing some information. So I think now some things are much more just how we do it, whereas before they would have been things we would have had to actually remember to do.
But back to your point, I mean, I think one of the things you're referencing is that there was some professional help. There was a marriage seminar we've taken that deals with conflict resolution techniques. I think that's so valuable, right? Because like I said, I mean, I'm not really that, I can't figure it out. And how do you extricate yourself or calm the conversation down versus escalating it, which typically is what happens. And so, certain books and seminars are really helpful in that regard. Personality tests are helpful, trying to understand what your strengths are and the other person's strengths are. And those things also explain some of the things that irritate you about the other person. Like, why can't this person just pick up all their crap, or whatever. And you realize that every human has certain strengths and then certain weaknesses. And everyone's wired in that certain way. And I think that's helpful to know about another person.
Yeah. It's a really good point. I mean, there's a lot of people out there that, maybe they don't spend time or money really learning and getting educated on relationships and their specific relationship from a different angle. I'm of the mindset that I don't know my own blind spots. So sometimes that's necessary and it can help a lot. And I'm sure, you guys specifically have done a lot in that area, which is really cool and valuable.
One of the problems that we have as entrepreneurs is we're always performing, right? We're always, like you said, you're always on, we're always performing, and you can always work harder, work more. And so therefore we tend to not pay attention to our relationships. And then it kind of bites us in the ass, truly, right? Because if you have, imagine you are constantly fighting with your girlfriend, your spouse, how draining that is. You mentioned how draining, how can you spend all your energy on building a business when you have major problems at home, right? It's right. Really, versus if you have a marriage that's really working, where instead of it sucking the energy out of you, it's actually energizing you, and you can do more than without the other person. I think that's where the 1 + 1 = more than 2 is really powerful. And I think that's really the only reason one would get married, in my opinion, is you become a better version of yourself. Honestly, I couldn't do what I'm doing without, unless I didn't have kids. Okay, fine. Okay, fair. I could have been a hermit, and then I wouldn't have to deal with all these feelings and relationships. But, if you're going to have a family, man, someone's got to focus on, you have to focus on a relationship, because it's either energizing or draining.
Do you guys make business decisions together?
No, I'm the boss.
I know that's not true, but guys.
Hey.
Do we make business decisions together? I'm not involved in the day-to-day minutia of what goes on at work. I know big picture. I know names of players, big ideas. Michael basically comes home and downloads everything. And, sometimes he needs another point of view. And I offer that to him, but do we make the decisions together? We don't sit down and like, okay, let's hash out. Should we do this deal? Should I do this? Not to that extent.
Do you guys work together? So you work together in business in any ways though?
Sort of, but we do struggle with that. I mean, I know there are some couples, especially that they work together every day, and we have not been able to make that work.
I realized in college that we don't do that well. We took a class together. That wasn't good. I think that I've never thought of myself as competitive, but I think maybe that's part of it. The competitive, like we both want it our way, and it does not necessarily work very well in a business.
So here's how it goes. Hey, honey, you said you get this report done by 5 o'clock today. It is certainly 5:01, therefore late. You're like not the boss of me. What am I, one of your team members?
I'm not an employee.
You can't boss me around. I'm like, well, how can I hold you accountable? Right. So now I have to treat her differently than everybody else. It's not going to work. Right. The only way it works, though, and I've observed this, for example, with a fair cloth, with Matt and Liz, for example, we had a conversation around this. And the way it does work for us is if you have a lane, okay, let's say you have an area of responsibility, and I'm not micromanaging you, whatever that lane is, and Matt and Liz they have lanes. So it's not like they hold each other accountable every single day. They're not micromanaging each other. They're like, okay, you're going to do this thing, okay, and we can talk about it, but it's kind of your thing, and we just support each other. But I'm not like holding you accountable for hitting milestones and rocks and measurables. Like that's probably not going to work. So if you're working in business and your spouse has a certain area of responsibility, a sandbox that you can each play in, I think that could work.
That works better.
So I have this issue where I don't realize it, but I'll be working all day and Shayna will eavesdrop on some of the conversations and things that I'm working on. So she kind of knows like what happened that day. And then it was a big deal. And I'll come back and I'll be at dinner with her or something. I'm like, yeah, this happened today. And she's like, I know, and I don't want to hear about it. She just completely cuts it there. She's like, I want to talk about something different. I don't want to hear about this issue because they never stop. And so I'm just curious, I'm sure that exists somewhere in your guys' relationship to a degree where it's like, we're done talking about this stuff. Like, let's shut it off.
To a degree, I can listen well. I can ask, that's something he's still working on. I can ask questions. And so I do know what's going on. It's when it starts getting really repetitive that I'm done. Or when he starts explaining something he's done before, because not only can I listen, I can usually remember.
I do neither very well.
And he does neither very well.
I neither listen, or if I happen to listen, I don't remember.
And so when it gets a little bit tedious like that, I'm like, okay, move on. I got it. Or we don't need to do that. But I think just because we've been doing this for the years, because he's been working from home and working on this business for so long, like it's kind of part of our story. So I hear it and usually only shut him down when I'm done. It's really gone on. Yeah,
but she's very good at listening. And the thing is like, she doesn't have to know about all the details. She gets the gist of things. And then she says, well, have you thought about this? And I'm like, no. How can I possibly miss that? Well, you listen to it for 90 seconds and you ask me a question I didn't think about. So irritating and also helpful.
Yeah, so I'll get caught. This is weird. I think, I don't know, or maybe it's normal, but if I have like a big speech to somebody or something that's pretty important that I have to talk to somebody, I'll recite the speech by myself. And I'll get caught by her and she'll be like, are you talking to yourself again? I'm like,
I haven't tried that yet, Gary.
Yeah, I guess I am.
Right.
And then when we had that summer home, we lived with another couple for the summer and I would get caught by them too. And they're like, dude, are you crazy? Like, you recite these things. And I literally, like, I practice speeches before I go into them. So I'm prepared. And then it never goes the way you think anyways. It's silly stuff. But just kind of going back to, you guys have so much going on. You guys accomplish so much, really, and running, if you got a family, a home, a business, it's all a balancing act. How do you guys manage your time and energy?
Well, I mean, I go first. I mean, again, for me, that's been a challenge for me, and it sometimes is. But Vivian will remind me, right? So we have certain boundaries around certain things. So for example, my latest rule is that if I'm outside of business hours and have the laptop open or my phone open, if someone talks to me in the family for any reason whatsoever, I don't care what it's about, I have to put the phone down or close the laptop and listen, even though I might not find it interesting at all. So that's boundary number one. And then, I mean, we do split up our roles, right? I mean, Vivian, I mean, she really, because she's a relationship person, she spends the most amount of time with our kids. And then we kind of run the household together. She probably does a bit more than I do, but the most important thing is that she really has built relationships with our kids. So they still kind of want to hang out with us, right? They actually might not ever leave. And so if it were left up to me, and so now I focus on the businesses, right? And now it frees me up to not have to worry about the actual family as much. And I still have to, of course, spend time with my family. But I would say, you know, the trust that we built with our kids is largely due to you.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's super important. I mean, your kids are just cool kids, man. I know them, and from when I've come to visit, and you know, they're the way you guys have raised them. It's pretty incredible that you actually have kids that first of all, like their parents, and they genuinely like you guys, from what I know, and what I've been there. But you know, how do you guys kind of manage how you, like, for me at least, I'm looking at it in the future and I'm like, I'm not sure how to navigate like the school and the different elements that go into raising a family. How did you guys decide on that?
What do you mean? Clarify that.
Just like how would you you're going to set them up for school, what path you're going to go down with that, how you're going to raise them in kind of the environment, because as entrepreneurs, we don't really look at the system the same way. It's true. And so I personally, this is a question for me, you know, I'm not 100% sure how I'm going to navigate that specifically in the upcoming environment, because you know, you have kids, your kids are doing other things right now. Like they're going into YouTube and other things like that. How did you guys decide to help guide them in a direction on the education side that would set them up for success?
Well, I think originally we started traditionally and with our kids in public school, and then we've always just kind of looked at what it is that they were learning and how that was going about. Then we tried private school for a couple of years, and then decided at that time we couldn't afford, as we were having more kids, to do private school in Northern Virginia for at least three kids, and homeschooling just kept popping up. And selfishly, when our kids were younger, we always went on vacation in October because it was still warm enough and not everybody was out there. And the idea of homeschooling would allow us to continue to do that and then take our kids with us when we decided to go without getting caught up in the traditional school schedule. And it would also allow us to see what it is that they were interested in and help them pursue those things in a non-traditional environment. So we've been homeschooling now this is our 13th year homeschooling our kids. And they have shown interest in certain areas, and we've had that opportunity, the time to allow them to focus on some of those things.
I mean, that requires that you spend quality time with your kids, that you're interested in what they're learning at school. Like, really, what in the world are they learning? And, you know, and the quality of what they're learning and the values of what you're learning. And, you know, that requires time and commitment. And that was, again, Vivian, she looked and see what they were learning, and she was like starting to shake her head going, I cannot believe the stuff that these kids come home from school with.
No disrespect to the teachers, because I don't think it's the teacher's fault. It's just what they were learning and what they weren't allowed to do, and the limits that were placed on them in the school system. There were other options, and we decided to try it out for a year. We've decided to try it out every year for the last few.
Yeah. And again, that does require a commitment. I mean, not every family might be in a position to homeschool, because someone in the family has to take the time. Now, the good news about homeschooling is, as the kids get older, certainly like 6th, 7th grade, the parents really aren't teaching anymore. They're just providing curricula, and they have to make sure the kids do the work, right? And there's online stuff now as well. So the actual amount of teaching, then there's in-person co-ops, et cetera. So the parent themselves aren't really teaching stuff anymore. It's just a matter of providing the resources and then holding your kid accountable. But in so doing, you're spending more time with the kids, so you get to know them a little bit more, and you can notice certain things, right? So, our 16-year-old started showing an interest in music and piano. So we sent her to piano lessons. And now today she's writing music. She's learned to play the guitar. She's learned how to do software. And so now she's producing her own songs, and it's just amazing. And so, looking at your kids and see what do they like to do, what are they good at, and then encouraging them. And sometimes it's hard to do because I like to say school gets in the way of some of those things. Comments on it?
Yeah, apparently, according to Michael, school always gets in the way.
It really does. Our 20-year-old daughter is employed our other 3 kids, and she's literally got paying jobs for them. And they, again, can't get to it because of school. So she's basically fired them.
Jeez. Yeah, on the other side of it, were you guys ever worried about that your kids were not going to grow up normal and have like a normal social life because you guys wanted to put them in that pack? Because that's honestly, like, I've had to discuss this myself with Shayna, and I'm like, hey, I like this option. Like, when I saw what you guys accomplished with your kids, I'm like, man, he's got like 4 really smart kids that are doing what they love. That's inspiring to me. And, Shayna's immediate reaction was, well, what about their social life and what that looks like? So how did you guys navigate that?
We'll talk about that.
Well, we've been very, very blessed to have opportunities for our kids. When we were in Virginia, we were part of a homeschool co-op. I helped found it. They're in their like 11th year now. And that allowed our kids to have opportunities to do classes together once a week. And we met for recess once a week, and then field trips once a week. So, your socialization, well, we were out and about doing things. The other really neat thing about homeschooling is that kids learn to interact with other people, other kids that are not necessarily their own age and within their own peer group. So, just because you're in 6th grade does not mean you're only talking to 6th graders. And I'm sure, we've all met a few 6th, 7th, 8th graders. They don't have, sometimes the sense is not quite there yet. They haven't had that experience. So it allows them to be in the company of older kids. They can learn some good things from older kids. From younger kids, it allows them to be the leader. And so we found that was super beneficial to have these kids in those opportunities. They've played sports. My kids have played sports from middle school into high school, varsity teams as well. We have proms and dances. So that traditional stuff that families are often looking for in a public school environment or even private school environment, and think that you can't find it in homeschool communities. It's changing. There are a lot of kids that are homeschooled these days, especially with the whole COVID shutdown type thing. A lot of people are looking to see opportunities and creating new opportunities for kids that are not in the traditional school system.
Wow. That's really interesting to me, because that's like it's not so black and white on that side. It sounds like that's almost a limiting belief to think that those types of activities don't exist out there, right? Because you guys have found it, and it's really amazing to see all the interests that your kids have, and the things they've been able to accomplish going this method. How do you guys set? So you've talked about this before, but how do you guys set goals with your kids and your family that align with the values?
Oh, I got this one. This is productivity related. I got it. Yeah. So, which one? Values or goals are they're a little bit different.
Goals. Let's start with goals.
Goals. Okay. So I obviously goal setting for us is very important. We use EOS in both of our businesses, which is the enterprise operating system, which is the way you run companies, how you set goals, how you conduct meetings. We don't do that. Okay, just to be clear. But there's I'm part of a mastermind called GoBundance, and one of their values is extreme accountability. And they have something called a one sheet where you are supposed to measure various aspects of your life and set goals for different areas of your life, not just for business and finance, but relationships, lifestyle, spirituality, personal development. Okay.
Health.
Yeah, health. And so I introduced that about 18 months ago, and it didn't go so well. There was substantial resistance.
We're still working on it.
And also a little bit for my wife. She doesn't leave. She's a cloud. Okay. You can't pin down a cloud, right? So getting her to do specific goals by a certain time is not really, but having said that, the kids have now kind of resigned themselves to daddy's craziness, and it's getting a little easier. And what they're finding is that they can literally set a goal, that something that doesn't exist right now, work towards it using human effort, and actually achieve something that they did not think they could do before.
And that's a pretty powerful realization, especially for a kid
Yeah.
to be able to do that. And I mean, that's just exciting because it probably feels like there's an alignment between your kids and what you guys are able to accomplish in general, which I don't know that that's always the case. It probably often is not, actually.
But let's talk about goal setting for a second here, because one of the things that we've been, talking about for 3 years about is what should they do after high school, right? And that required long conversations because everybody goes to college. Well, our two oldest, 18 and 20s, are not going to college. And that required considerable conversation.
And it's not that they won't ever go to college. They're just not in college right now.
But the reason they're not is because we sat down and talked about their goals, right? And so what do they like? What do they want to do? And how can we support them? And is college is college going to do that? Or is it maybe something else that's going to do that? Like, for example, Dominic, our 18-year-old, he's just a really gifted writer. He always has. I mean, he's written stuff that just will blow our mind. I was pretty much convinced that he ripped it off the internet and it was original work. And so for him, if he wants to, now he's writing for us on the educational side. He's writing blog posts and emails and video scripts and that kind of stuff. But he had to learn how to write content, right? So he's not learning how to write an essay, opening paragraph, 3 supporting points and a conclusion. No. So his English teacher would not give him a very high grade for the stuff he's writing now, but it's getting clicks and downloads. You know what I mean? So anyway, he's not
converting.
He's not going to learn that in college. Okay. But that doesn't mean he's not going to get his education. So he's read 5 writing books. He went through a content writing course, and he's now working with a mentor to get better at his writing, which of course does require learning, education, and then to some degree investment. So it's not like you're getting away scot-free. The question is, what will help the kid achieve their goals? Now, if the kid wants to be an attorney or a doctor, well, you're not going to learn that on YouTube. Okay, you're going to have to go to medical school for that.
Yes,
hopefully.
Yeah,
for sure.
So I having gone to college, I remember that crossroads, and it was a little bit earlier than maybe you had those crossroads, but or a little bit later. But I remember thinking, I'm like, I can't see myself working for someone, but this is probably the right thing to do. So let's just go into it and see what happens. And there were a couple key things that were helpful for me. Like, I learned how to run an organization that made no money when I joined the fraternity, which was interesting. And then I learned how to write pretty well because I picked up writing, and that was something I started to enjoy, but everything else was kind of like a waste in a lot of ways. And so I think as we've gotten further down the path from then, it's more acceptable, especially with the evolution of the internet and everything, to go in a direction that makes the most sense. And I like what you said, Vivian, when you said that that doesn't mean they're never going to go to college. So it's not like one or the other. It's not like this option's never there if you need it for something, but you guys are open to something else, which plays into your kids' strengths, which is really cool.
Well, I mean, and it was a really big conversation. I mean, now it was much easier with Dominic, but when Mia first decided, I mean, when she was looking at it as a, sophomore, junior in high school, she was going to college. Like, I went to college. I grew up, everybody goes to college. That's what you do next. And we just really started looking at things with more of a, more intentional, like, what are we going to do when we get to college? What do you want to study? Is this where you want to go? What do you want to do? And she was a 2020 grad. So that kind of really made things a lot different for her. Each semester she looked at it going, do I want to go? Because the environment that was in college at the time was much more constrained, and, she did not like that. And so I think that just being a lot more intentional about what she wanted to do, which was eventually start her own business. She's like, I'm just going to go ahead and start it and let's go. So, we've talked about that, about going to school, me getting used to the idea of not going to school, because that's a whole paradigm shift when you look at your kids and go, okay, you don't have to go to school, but they don't, and they can do many things these days. And that's really cool.
I mean, that's such good insight because it's true, but it's a big shift in the thinking of societal norms. I mean, really, your society is for so long. That's like you go to school, you go to college, and that's just what you do, and that's the system, right?
Right.
And it's exciting to when I first kind of met you guys and I looked into how you're navigating the waters outside of that. It's an exciting realization to know that that exists and not be afraid of it.
Right. Well, and again,
Really.
they can go back and take a class anytime they want.
Yep, for $5,000 for that class for one semester, right?
Right.
That was my one rule. I was like, I can never fail a class because I have to pay for this. And it's like I had to pay for my whole college. So I never failed one. I figured out ways to get C's if I needed to, but it was, yeah.
Fail that class.
I want to close this out, guys, and ask you a question. What would you say is the one lesson you'd like your children to learn and take that into adulthood?
I think, yeah, you and I's answer are probably going to be a little different. I think if I were to boil it down for me, since I'm, I think and it's I suppose related to productivity and efficiency, but I would say living intentionally. And I only say that because I did not live intentionally until I don't know, maybe my early 30s, when I started waking up and asking questions. Why am I doing this? Why is everybody else around me doing this? Does this really serve me? Right. So if you live intentionally, that means you need to take time to reflect and then really kind of discover who you are and why God put you on this green earth. And then of course you need the courage to pursue that path. And that requires a sense of adventure, curiosity, humility that you don't know everything, and a love for learning, and a love for improving yourself, and a love for growing, right? So I think that's the one thing I want my kids to take away.
I'm not going to disagree with him. I mean, to me, faith is very important. I would love for my children to have that relationship, and I think that would serve them because with that, they will grow into the person that God created them to be. And to be grateful for all those little things that we have, that we've been given, that'll give them joy. And I think that with that, regardless of what their life will throw at them, because life will throw crazy things, and the path that my children are currently on, they're all going to be entrepreneurs like you guys. And it's not an easy journey. There's a lot of strength that needs to go into that. And I think that faith in something that is greater than themselves will see them through those times that will be tough, because it has to be. It is. It just always is. I mean, there will be great things, and then they will be grateful for all of those joys.
Wow, we're on the same page about that. I didn't even check your notes before then.
Well, yeah, but you said intentionality, which includes like everything.
Ha ha! Checked them all off. I checked all your boxes.
Michael.
Gary.
So how can people get a hold of you if they need? No, I'm just kidding.
That's a good one.
You guys know where to go. But man, Vivian, Michael, it has been such a pleasure to be able to interview you guys. I know this is all really an amazing message for so many out there as we go into this Thanksgiving season, to just really be grateful and the way you guys have brought up your family and run such an amazing household. It's really cool to be able to peek behind the curtain and see exactly what you guys are doing back there. But thanks so much for coming on, and we'll catch you guys next time.